Late at night, at almost midnight, Ethan was trying to get home from the city. He was tired, cold, and frustrated because he had missed his usual train. When he reached the station, something felt off. The entire place was silent. No announcements. No workers. No other passengers. Just the cold wind moving through the empty platforms. And then he saw it. A single old train parked at the far end. Its lights flickered. Its windows were foggy. It looked abandoned. But the doors were open, waiting. Ethan checked his watch, sighed, and said quietly, "Whatever, I just need to get home." He stepped inside. The moment Ethan entered, the air felt different. Colder, heavier, like the train itself was breathing. Inside the carriage were a few passengers, but they all looked strange. Their faces were pale. Their clothes were old, almost outdated, and none of them looked at him not to have been on set. They stared at the floor, hands shaking slightly. Ethan took a seat near the middle of the carriage and tried to ignore the uncomfortable feeling in his stomach. Minutes later, the train slowly started moving. The lights flickered. Once, twice, then stayed dim. The train gave a long, deep groan, as if it didn't want to move. Ethan was scrolling on his phone when he heard it. A soft whisper. Very soft, but clear. "Don't stay!" He froze. He looked around. Everyone was sitting still, heads down, not moving. No one's lips had moved. He must have imagined it. He turned back to his phone, his heart pounding a little faster. Then the slow, heavy footsteps started. An old conductor, hunched and thin, was making his way down the aisle. His uniform was frayed and worn, and his face was hidden in the deep shadows of his cap. He stopped beside Ethan's seat, his presence casting a sudden chill. He didn't ask for a ticket. He just leaned in close, his voice a dry, raspy sound, like sandpaper on stone. "This train," he rasped, "doesn't stop for the living." Ethan stared, speechless. The conductor straightened up and continued his slow walk, leaving Ethan with a sense of pure dread. The other passengers remained silent, their heads bowed, as if they hadn't heard a thing. Suddenly, the lights in the carriage began to flicker wildly. On, off, on, off. In a brief moment of total darkness, Ethan saw her. At the far end of the carriage, a little girl was standing there, her form barely visible. When the lights came back on, she was gone. The space was empty. But then he felt it a puff of cold breath on the back of his neck, a chill that went straight to his bones. He spun around in his seat, his eyes wide with fear. There was no one there. The seat behind him was empty. But the whisper came again, this time right in his ear. A small, desperate voice. "Help me!" He flinched, pulling away. But there was nothing to pull away from. The voice was inside his head, echoing in the silence. He was alone, yet he wasn't. Without warning, the entire train began to shake violently. It wasn't the normal rocking of a moving train. This was a brutal, jarring tremor that threw him against the window. The lights flashed from a dim yellow to a terrifying, pulsing red. A deafening sound of creaking, groaning metal filled the air. And then came the whispers. "Docents, of tin swirling around him from every direction. Voices of men, women, and children, all speaking at once, their words a tangled mess of fear and pain. Just as quickly as it started, the shaking stopped. In the eerie red glow, the little girl was standing right in front of him. Her clothes were dirty and old, her eyes filled with a deep, haunting sadness. She looked at him, not with malice, but with pity. "You don't belong here," she said, her voice clear now, but trembling. "You're still alive." Ethan's gaze shifted past her. For the first time, the other passengers were looking up. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes hollow and dark, and they were all staring directly at him. With a horrifying, high-pitched screech, the train slammed to a halt. The red emergency lights bathed the carriage in a hellish glow. The ghost passengers rose from their seats as one, their movements slow and unnatural. They began to move toward him, their hands outstretched, their fingers like pale, grasping claws. A primal fear took. Ethan scrambled to his feet, pushing past the little girl and running for the doors at the end of the carriage. He fumbled with the handle, his hands shaking too much to get a grip. The ghostly figures were getting closer, their whispers growing louder, surrounding him. He finally managed to wrench the door open and threw himself out into the darkness. He hit the hard, gravel-covered ground, rolling over and over until he came to a painful stop. He pushed himself up, bruised and gasping for breath. Looked up, expecting to see the red-lit train. But there was nothing. The tracks were empty. There was no train, no sound, no lights, just the cold silence of the night. As the first light of dawn began to break, Ethan walked alone, dazed and shivering. He eventually found his way to a police station, the blue and red lights of a cruiser flashing in the quiet morning. He tried to explain what had happened, but the words wouldn't come out right. As he stood there, a final, dark whisper echoed in his mind, cold and clear. "You were the last living passenger."